Hi, it's Mike from Gear Diary, here to take a look at the iPad mini, the Google Nexus 7, and the Kindle Fire. These are the three premier small format tablets on the market right now, most popular certainly. And so with the iPad mini being the latest release, I wanted to look at them all in context. I actually have 20 different things that I want to look at in kind of rapid fire succession, so there's not going to be a lot of depth. First thing is size. The smallest of the three, if you take a look, is the Nexus, and you can compare that. It's a little bit, almost the same height, a little bit shorter than the iPad mini, and definitely about a ½ inch narrower. Same thing with the Kindle Fire. The Kindle Fire is a little bit shorter, but wider. Now the next thing is aspect ratio. When you look at back to each of these, and let me fire them up, unlock them all, we have, I'm just going to remove the smart cover on my iPad mini. The aspect ratio, we've got a very thin, narrow Nexus 7 versus a very wide format iPad mini, and the Kindle Fire falls somewhere in between. Now, in terms of judging these, the size is really a matter of feel. My hands, this is the widest. The Kindle Fire is the widest of the three. I don't have a problem holding it one-handed, either by the weight, which it is the heaviest, or from the size itself. This one is most definitely the narrowest, and nobody should have a problem holding that. And the iPad mini falls somewhere in between. So let's see, the next is the weight and the thickness. Now, you may not be able to get a feel from it on this side, but the iPad mini is just so much thinner than the other two. The thickest of the three is actually the Nexus, and the entire bezel portion comes up above of the mini. So you've got this entire chunk. It's a good chunk that is taller. Because of the way that they rounded the edges, it doesn't seem as thick as it really is, but it is a very thick device. The Kindle Fire really is much more of a brick. Now, in terms of bricks, weightness also factors in here. This is definitely the heaviest, then the Nexus, and the iPad mini is just really, really light. It feels like nothing in your hand. Even with the smart cover on, which again weighs not quite the same. It adds some weight. Even with the smart cover on, it's lighter than those other two. Screen resolution. Definitely something that has been talked about a lot. When you look at the iPad mini and you look at the other two, and I have to kick these both up, perhaps you can see a difference. I look and I can see not much of a difference. Smaller fonts, higher resolution, larger fonts, lower resolution. The clarity, I don't see a huge difference. Where it does figure in is if I'm looking at something, as Dan and I were mentioning, when we're looking at some of the text, whether it's emails or something like that, you can start to see the difference there. As a general practical element, I don't really find it to be an issue. External controls. Now, if you noticed, when I went to activate these and turn them on, the iPad mini wasn't an issue at all. For the Nexus, I had to kind of feel around a little bit. So, you've got the volume rockers, you've got the screen control, and nothing along the top but the microphone, and then on the bottom you do have USB and the 3.5mm. The biggest one that's a real pain, and even after this amount of time remains a pain, is the practically embedded controls of the Kindle Fire. So just getting to these, especially the screen one, is just a pain. And I find that I just tend to look for it in order to get there. So sounds and music. I already did a post where I compared the mini to the Kindle Fire. And the Kindle Fire, once again, has just got the most tremendous sound capability of the three. The Nexus just isn't even in the same league. It's nice that the iPad mini has stereo, but it doesn't make great use of it. It doesn't have powerful sound drivers. You really want headphones if you're going to do much of any listening. Whereas the Kindle Fire, you could actually use. Now the music capabilities, you've got Amazon MP3 built in, you've got iTunes built in, you've got the Google Play Music built in here. You do have the least flexibility on the iPad mini, but for me, my entire library is in iTunes, and I really appreciate the streaming capability there. So, one way or the other. Ebook reading. This again is going to be a bit of a push between them. I like having, and in fact, I grabbed some of the things that were on sale. There's yesterday there's a free book series, and then you take a look. You've got books, and they just it's a Kindle, like anything else. Here on the iPad mini, I actually again have absolutely no problem with any of the apps that I might choose to have. Again, not a problem reading on anything. And actually, if you look at the amount of text that you can flow on there, it's really nice. And similarly, you have a higher resolution, but the screen space, and this is going to be a common theme, Nexus 7's usable available screen space is by far the smallest, not even close. Gaming. Again, it's this one, what I've found is the iPad mini gets games first. iOS gets games first. This Nexus 7 has got the most powerful graphics processor. So if you're playing action games and you like what's available on Android, you're not going to be unhappy here. And that's really, for me, this is, the big point on this one is gaming performance. The Kindle Fire, you get a lot of the games, Android games that you would get on the other ones, and it performs well. The iPad mini also performs well. And what I've noticed, interestingly, is I don't see a huge difference in most games between this and, pointing over the side, but to my standard iPad, which is the Retina iPad 3. So because you scale down the screen, you actually really don't lose all that much. Video, watching videos. This is another one where I thought that I would have a real issue. But again, you've got this kind of letterbox format to begin with, so everything is squished down a little bit. You come over here onto the iPad mini, and suddenly you're blowing things up. And what I have found, in particular between the Kindle Fire and the iPad mini, is they're both really good viewing experiences for my Amazon Prime, Amazon Instant Video, which is where I prefer to do a lot of it, or on Hulu. Hulu, it works on the Nexus 7, so I can do that as well, but I just tend to gravitate towards these two. And so I really don't, despite the low resolution of the iPad mini, I have not found that to be an issue with watching videos. Now music, I talked about music sound, music production, that's kind of like a joke category because Android is an absolute and abysmal failure for music production due to internal issues with the system, to the point where the people behind FL Studio are developing their entirely own individual system to get around the limitations of Android. So Apple has built in the core audio, core MIDI system. So at the core kernel level, they have got it built in. So if you want to make music, iPad mini, only way to go. Productivity. Now, there's a couple things with productivity. First off, you need the apps. And actually, there are some decent apps across all three. However, when it comes down to the selection, the choice, the depth, and the breadth of Office-style apps, I have statistics programs. I have all sorts of different productivity apps on here. iOS just really leads the pack on that one. Which gets into the second thing, which I did mention with Dan in our video, is the keyboard. So I can pull up just a note-taker app, and I have a decent keyboard here. The one thing that I've always struggled with on Android, and I'm sure it's just me, to an extent anyway, although now that my wife is using a Galaxy S3, she's running into the same issues with the accuracy of the keyboard compared to iOS. I find the accuracy, the predictive typing, good enough that I have no problem using this keyboard. I would never try to do productivity on the Kindle Fire, and when I did try to do it on the Nexus 7, I actually found myself going away from doing things. So definitely not the way to go because of the virtual keyboard. Now, connections and compatibility. Micro USB, proprietary, non-standard, first ever Lightning connector. So that in and of itself is initially an issue. So now if I want to hook up to external video, I have a micro HDMI here. Here I have Lightning. Obviously if I had an Apple TV I could use AirPlay, but I don't. For my other iPad I do have a 30-pin to HDMI. So, you know, again, it's connections are an issue here. That's definitely for sure. I don't have yet a Lightning to 30-pin connector yet.